Good evening and welcome to Tuesday Folk People. My name is Maddie Leedham, and this evening we're going to be talking to a Brighton-based folk group whose approach to folk is integral to the preservation of the tradition. Embracing the historical element of folk, this group collect the little-known and forgotten lyrics, poems, and stories from folk history and revive them by setting them to their own outstanding compositions. Having formed in 2018, this group have released 2 critically acclaimed albums, with their third one on the way. Each album is as unique and different from the other, which shows this group's immense range, where they master the comedic, the tragic, and the sensitive. Having led projects with folk legends like Frankie Armstrong, June Tabor, Stick in the Wheel, Ian Anderson, and many others, this group have truly taken inspiration from the folk world around them to bring authenticity and creativity to their performances. So it brings me great pleasure to introduce Bird in the Belly, and let's welcome Laura, Adam, Ben, and Tom to our online studio. Hello, Bird in the Belly. How are you all?
We're good. Hello.
Good, thank you.
It's so great to have you. The name Bird in the Belly, just to get us warmed up, where did that come from?
Well, we get asked this often, don't we, Ben? And we wish that we had a more interesting answer. We actually, when we first formed, it was Ben and Adam and I sitting in a pub thinking this would be good. Let's do something together. Both of us, I think, or all of us, a bit kind of frustrated with what was going on with our separate, musical outfits. So we thought we'd get together and do something together. And the original idea was that we were going to find songs from locations across the UK, which we did in the end. But the original idea was that we were going to record those songs in underground locations in those places, like in caves or thinking about the technical hitches we've had coming in here, I don't know how we thought we might record in a cave, but nonetheless. So the idea was that it would be songs singing out from the belly of Britain, and hence Bird in the Belly came.
And you're all the birds?
Yeah, I think, are we the birds?
I think we're the birds. Maybe the songs are the birds.
Ah, okay. And isn't there something like, there are actual traditional legends or something to do with Bird in the Belly, like it actually means other things as well?
Yeah, I think there's something about butterflies in the belly, like the old having butterflies, feeling like you're nervous. I think that comes from some kind of traditional folklore. So I think it's something to do with that. But quite often other people will come up with far better explanations for why we're called Bird in the Belly than we have. So
I think there was a thing where they were saying different feelings are different things in your belly. So like butterflies were nerves, and maybe birds, if you had birds in your belly, that was love, and if you had something else in your belly, that was something else. But people are always, people come up to shows with much better ideas.
Yeah, you could just write it all down, everything, and be like, yeah, we have so many reasons, we really thought this through. I don't have to know that you didn't think of it. Okay, well, that's brilliant. And it is, I really like the name. I think it's really nice and unusual, actually. You don't really have that kind of, I don't know, the word belly. That's what I think is unusual. Anyway, people must be dying to hear your music, because that is really what this is all about, is your music. So let's have your first song, which is Give Me Back My Heart Again. And I don't know who is best to explain this. I'm going to throw it over to any one of you. But what is this song about?
Ben, go on.
So this is like just a song about good old heartbreak. It's from the Bodleian Broadside archive, and it's the first song. So we find texts and lyrics and stories, and we put them to our own music. And this is the first song we did that for as a band. But yes, it's a good old Victorian story of being sad.
I'll forget the happy past. You have caused me so much pain. Shadows over my pathway cast. Life to me was once so bright. I dreamt would so remain. but my hopes have vanished quite. Give me back my heart again. Give me back my heart again. Give me back my body. Give me back my mind, my friend. Give me back my heart again. Give me back my heart again. I'll forget the happy past. You have caused me so much pain. Shadows are on my pathway cast. Life to me was once so bright. I dreamt would so remain, but my hopes have vanished quite. Give me back my heart again. Give me back my heart again. Give me back my body. Give me back my mind, my friend. Give me back my heart again. Again. Do not heed my foolish tears. Tears a bitter cup to drain. Sad will make the coming years. I have been too true to thee. Now I know I loved in vain. Break your vow, I leave you free. Give me back my heart again. Give me back my heart again. Give me back my body. Give me back my mind, my friend. Give me back my heart again. Strangers we must meet. Other smiles were soon in chain. Other lips thine own will greet. Go the wrong you've done forget. Neck and eye sweet peace regain. All that we had never met. Give me back my heart again. Give me back my heart again. Give me back my body. Give me back my mind, my friend. Give me back my heart again. Give me back my heart again. Give me back my body. Give me back my mind, my friend. Give me back my heart again.
I love that song so much. I just think that I don't know, you do a really clever thing with Laura and Ben when you both sing, even though you're singing the same song, it feels a bit like a duet, so almost like you're telling two people's stories that are completely different, but it's in the same traditional song sort of thing. It's really clever, and I just think and the move as well, from the sparseness to the addition of instruments. I think that's the most satisfying feeling in a traditional song, when it just builds and you're like, oh yes, there we go. So really, really lovely. Thank you for that, guys.
It is a bit call and response, that song, in a way.
Oh, is it?
In a way, yeah. I guess there's something about Ben and I singing together which sometimes brings that sense into the songs that we sing. Not always because that's the way that they were intended, but actually just because we are like a male and a female voice kind of singing back and forth at each other. But we also quite like flipping the perspective. So there's another song that we do called The Welsh Ploughboy, which is from the perspective of a woman, which is actually quite unusual in traditional folk song. And Ben sings it. He kind of takes the lead in that song. And there's something quite interesting about his kind of very gruff male vocal singing a song from female perspective.
Yeah, well, I feel like a lot of women sing songs from male perspectives, because I mean there's not a lot of choice but to, so it's quite nice that alternate version. I think we kind of explored it a little bit, but how did Bird in the Belly actually form? How did it come about?
So Adam and Laura were in and are still in a folk duo called Hickory Signals, and I do stuff, solo stuff, and we, both of our acts, were invited to a Nest Collective gig at Cecil Sharp House. That was something to do with like young folk. And so then we were talking afterwards and saying like nice things to each other about our sets. And then we realized that we lived like 2 streets away from each other but had never met. So yeah, then we started just hanging out, and then we were all getting a bit frustrated with our individual acts and how they were doing. So we thought we'd create something unsuccessful together.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's great.
And then we were using Tom's studio, and then Tom sort of started joining in, and it was really great.
Tom and I used to play together in a hip hop collective. So it's about as far removed from our kind of comfort zone.
It's instrumentalists, not rappers. Definitely.
Oh, okay. Oh, that sounds amazing. Wait, so Tom, you have your own studio?
Yeah, I've had my own studio for about 10 years now in Brighton, and I have rehearsals and residential bands and just do a bit of recording when I feel like it. I also work. It's not my main income, but it's nice creative space.
That must be so handy as a band to have one member with a studio. Anytime you need it, you can just go in.
Yeah, it's
Love
very,
it, guys.
it's very handy. Saves us a lot of money over the years as well for recordings and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and am I right in saying that your first album, which is The Crowing, is that correct? Yeah. That you started that even before you were a band, so it wasn't actually intended for you guys. Is that right?
Yeah, so like Laura was saying earlier, we kind of had this idea that we're gonna find these songs from different geographical, that's the word, locations around the country, and record these songs in underground locations around the country. And initially we were going to get different vocalists to sing each song, so we're going to sort of reach out to different folk artists that we like, but then we just selfishly kept them all for ourselves, or couldn't convince anyone else to sing them, one or the other.
I think that it's not selfish. You formed the band, and it's really great. Very glad that you guys did. Now, the other thing that is really interesting, in my opinion, is your repertoire and the kind of songs that you sing. I'm going to throw this over to you, Laura, but what kind of stuff is it that you actually explore? Like, what are you going for when you look for your repertoire?
I think mainly it's songs about people, which is possibly a bit simplistic. But I guess what interests us in traditional music or traditional words or kind of is the kind of universality of the topics and kind of what comes up, the stories that are being told, and hundreds and hundreds of years ago are somehow still relevant. And I guess it's because they're about people and about the human experience. So we find songs through that, really. We kind of find snippets of texts or stories or poems, whatever it is, that speak to us now. The language might be archaic and the subject matter might be slightly different, but there's something in it that feels really kind of contemporary in quite a lot of the stuff that we find. So it's that, really. We rarely go into kind of searching for songs with an idea in mind about exactly what we want to find a song about, but rather we kind of come at it the other way around and just do a lot of looking around and exploring and reading and find threads of things that interest us. And it's usually because there's something really modern about it or something really relatable about it. Yeah.
I think when I spoke to you guys before, I think Adam, I think it was you, said something about how you like to bring songs back to life, like maybe the forgotten songs. Could you explain a bit more what you mean by that?
Yeah, I suppose there's the folk canon of, there's a big batch of traditional songs which lots of people sing that are well that's well known and sung by lots of different people. I suppose we initially have started to look in places for songs that aren't particularly well known or that we don't know versions of that still speak to us. So they might be forgotten, or they they might just not be as well known, or they might not have been recorded recently by artists that we know or that we're aware of. So, but we still find this the song, the context of the song, really relevant, like what Laura was saying. Yeah, so I suppose we're not looking in like the traditional canon as such that everyone's aware of. We're trying to find some other stuff,
which is brilliant, because we're always needing more stuff to come in so that everyone's not singing the same thing over and over again, which is obviously great, everyone recognizes it, but sometimes you do want something fresh, which is exactly what I would say that Bird in the Belly do, is bring fresh material, and it feels really fresh whilst maintaining that folky atmosphere. I don't know, it's really great. But I wondered, obviously there's this idea that over time some songs will be filtered out because they're not very good, they're not appropriate, any of that sort of stuff. Why do you think the songs that you perform were forgotten?
I think maybe it's just in a lot of cases it's just a volume thing. There's just so many songs, and with a lot of the broadside ballads that we use, these were just churned out, sold for a penny for a sheet of songs, and there'd just be so many written. And I guess now obviously things are recorded and we've got the internet, but even with that, there's so many songs that go unheard and aren't known by the general public. So it's quite nice to find the songs that have been overlooked and give them a bit of a second chance at being known. And it's interesting, like obviously we don't know what the tune was like originally, and we never will know what they sounded like originally. It's quite fun to sort of give them a second chance and give them a new breath. Yeah.
Lyrics that we do find, the music comes pretty instantly. I mean, we don't take long to create the final feel of the song, so I guess certain songs just speak out to us more than others.
It must feel amazing when you like uncover them and stuff. It must feel like you're historians just finding like a bit of history that's been forgotten and you're bringing it back to the everyday audience. It's really satisfying.
I do like to get phone memos and send them to me as soon as possible, because I'm quite excited about the next dark lyric or the next, I don't know, beautiful imagery to put music to. So
yeah. Oh, amazing.
And I think there's a lot of, interruption. I think there's a lot of there's a lot to wade through. Like there's a hell of a lot of content that now has been really, well archived in the Bodleian Broadside Ballads online archive. Obviously there are tons of written material and books, and there's a lot that is there to be kind of sifted through. I mean, we could spend, you could fill albums and albums with it, but I guess and sometimes it's not really definable, but there's something that speaks to us about the songs or the pieces that we do choose to interpret, which there's something, like Tom said, that makes you really excited, and it is really satisfying actually to go, this is really useful. That said, and we don't do this a lot because it's important not to, but we do tweak lyrics or words, or sometimes the kind of gist or the meaning of a sentence, for example, either to bring it up to date in terms of kind of language so that it's understandable, but also sometimes if there's something that has lost meaning over time or that doesn't translate well in terms of what we now understand, we do kind of tweak things as we need to. We also sometimes will tweak the order of something in order that it makes more sense chronologically. So I guess just to be, because some people would hear that and think that that's absolutely wrong, that actually you should be completely true to the original piece. And to a certain extent, we think that that's true. We're not trying to whitewash or completely overwrite things that are there in history, but we do think that for the sake of kind of deriving meaning and like understanding for songs, that it's important that we do that at times. So I guess that's just a caveat, really, because there'll be people who potentially who listen, 12 people who listen to our songs who go, that's not quite true. That's not quite as the original would have been. And yeah, there are some strong opinions about whether that is appropriate to do or not. But we do think about it quite a lot and do things with, we hope, good reason.
Yeah, I mean, from my personal perspective, I do believe that things should be tweaked if they're potentially harmful to a group of people, but the meaning in the lyrics. I think that there's no point in, obviously it is our history, but I don't think there's any point in kind of solidifying that and keeping that going. I do think it is worth changing it and potentially just explaining that you've changed it so that the history isn't forgotten, but bringing
It's
it.
always going to be there.
And also, I think there's a lot of, when you get into the folk industry and things, there's a lot of rules and things that people have put in place, and actually, like, they don't get to put rules in place. Like, these songs and these lyrics, they belong to all of us, so we can do what we want with them. If you don't like it, you don't have to listen to it, but you don't get to make the rules for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's quite a common thing, is people being like, that's not folk, that's not how it's done. But I think it's becoming more and more accepted that people are just going to do what they do, whether they add like something that's inherently not folk, like some electronic additions or whatever. But I think people are getting a bit more experimental with it, which it's really great. And I think that what you guys are doing is really good. It's bringing history, but also making it making it accessible for the current society.
Yeah, I think that's it. And there's something as well about the context of the songs as well, and whether or not they started as songs. So there's a song I'm thinking of that we call All You Females, and it was originally would have been like a kind of news piece, if you like. And it's written from the female perspective, which again is really interesting, but it's a kind of call to action, or at least when you read it, it feels like a call to action. Come all you females, pay attention to some really atrocious goings on in a workhouse, in a kind of Victorian workhouse, where women and children are being exploited. And probably the original version of that would have gone into a newspaper as a bit of like juicy gossip, kind of a human interest story. But the way that we've interpreted it when we've read it, and the way that we've kind of written it, feels much more like a modern female call to arms or call to action. And I think there's something about that. There's something about the context and the way that things are retold that give them a different kind of meaning. And that's really interesting in itself.
Brilliant. I mean, this is fascinating. I could talk about this all day, because I think that it's something that's quite topical in folk at the moment. But let's go for your next song. I'm sure people are dying to hear what you have next. And so this next one is Phoebe to Phyllis. What is this one about before we hear it?
Laura, do you want to introduce it?
Yeah, so Phoebe to Phyllis is about two friends, Phoebe and Phyllis, and probably several other women who live on their street in Yarmouth. And they basically, their husbands were away fishing, working at war, and they were kind of left at home alone, living with kind of no work and very little money. And in the face of all that, they decided to set up a brothel on their street. So they opened their houses to the fishermen and the men who were coming in. And they undercut the women in the city, and they were able to make a really viable business for themselves. So kind of say what you want or think what you want about sex work, but actually there's something really tenacious about Phoebe and Phyllis and their kind of friends who live on this street in Yarmouth. And there's something really contemporary about the things that they talk about in the song, which you'll hear through the lyrics.
Come listen a while a story I'll tell about lasses of pleasure that nearby do dwell. To tell our abode we are not ashamed. You'll find us in Yarmouth right down to the lane. Says Phoebe to Phyllis, we'll follow the game. Although we are told it will bring us to shame, it's hard to accept we'll survive on our own. Why shouldn't the lasses make cash of their own? I can trust in my neighbours, I can trust in my sisters. When we're down on our knees with no one to save us, oh, we can trust in our neighbours and sisters. You're welcome, my gentlemen, pray now walk in. We're from half a crown to a noggin of gin. We are not as stiff as the lasses in town. When trading is dead, the price must come down. Oh, call in our favourite to frolicsome spark. With Phoebe he played one night in the dark. He kissed her and hugged her and laid by her side. The spirit, it moved as she got up to ride. I can trust in my neighbours, I can trust in my sisters. When we're down on our knees with no one to save us, oh, we can trust in our neighbours and sisters. When our husbands come home and ask what we've done, to look at those cuckolds, there will be some fun. We'll bleed for ourselves and make them believe our locks have grown rusty for want of a key. To Bridewell of late, poor Phyllis was sent, and there for a while she was forced to repent. You have to admit that the whole thing's a farce. Can't work with her hands and can't live by her charms. I can trust in my neighbours, I can trust in my sisters. When we're down on our knees with no one to save us, oh, we can trust in our neighbours and sisters. I can trust in my neighbours, I can trust in my sisters. When we're down on our knees with no one to save us, oh, I can trust in my, I can trust in my, I can trust in my neighbours and sisters.
Again, I love that song. It's just brilliant, and I love the entrepreneurial side to Phoebe and Phyllis there, and kind of taking something that is often frowned upon, but making it into like a good business, as you said, a viable business. And I really think that the instrumentation in that, it sets the scene so well, and like the violin motif gave it so much drama. I felt like I was watching some like drama unfold. It was really, really good.
It's quite relentless, that violin part.
No, it's great. But is that from your second album?
Yes.
Am I right? So that's Neighbours and Sisters. What was this whole album about? Because it was quite different to The Crowing, wasn't it?
I think we really wanted to focus on sort of human interest stories, like Laura was saying earlier. It was a lot of us were working in sort of helping social care or the charity sector, and we've been working a lot with Frankie Armstrong, who used to be a social worker. So yeah, like Laura was saying, we just wanted to find good, hefty stories about real people that had sort of been forgotten. And like with Phoebe to Phyllis, it's these two, or probably more, but two in the song, really sort of fierce, brave women who are like telling this really interesting story about sex work in a time when there wasn't any liberal thoughts about sex work. But it's a really sort of positive, empowering story of these women sort of coming together and sticking up for each other. And we just want to find stories like that. Like, we've got a song on the album as well called 45 George Street, about the last two gay men to be hanged in England. So there's like a lot of just history that isn't told or isn't well known, and we wanted to really focus on those big hefty stories.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I really like about folk, is that although not in all cases, but history is often rewritten, isn't it, to like decide if the winner, or to tell a story from a certain person's perspective. And I think that by going through the folk canon, you can find the truth in a lot of songs. And that's obviously what you've got. Was it 40 George Street, did you say? It was
45 George Street.
45 George Street.
5 doors up.
Right. Okay. But how does the songwriting work for you as a group? I'm going to throw this over to you, Adam. How do you kind of go about it? Who does the majority of the writing and all that sort of stuff?
So Ben and Laura do the majority of finding the songs and the lyrics and the stories and piecing them together, and often would record little voice memos with a melody or an idea of a shape of a song, and then they will send that to Tom or me or both of us, and Tom and I will, so we might take a song each where we would come up and think of like a guitar structure or a chord progression to go underneath it, and then we might come together in the studio and try and play it together. And then when it comes to kind of recording, we leave Tom to add all of the beauty on top of it, so he adds all of the violin parts and organ and everything else that he can do. But that's generally the way it happens. Like, Ben and Laura do the lyrics and the vocals, and then Tom and I will work out some kind of instrumentation behind it. And it feels quite an organic process. You know, we've worked that system out over the 5 years or so we've been together, and it works quite well.
Yeah. Tom, I have a question. If you're adding all of these instruments, like an organ, and obviously making the sound amazing, how do you then do that live?
Well, because Adam can play so many instruments at the same time, we have quite a big sound. So I think we don't lose too much energy from recording to live.
Okay.
One day it would be nice to have some more textures in it, but we do what we can with what we've got at the moment, and we've only got a small car, so it's just really handy that Adam's so multi-dexterous on these instruments that we have quite an energetic live sound. So we don't worry about it too much, because you could go crazy trying to recreate, I don't know, symphonies that we do, but
Brilliant.
yeah.
Going back to your second album, slightly off topic, but I was like, you did like a little project alongside it, didn't you, where you interviewed artists? Can someone explain what I'm talking about? I'm sure you know.
Yeah, so when we were sort of feeling our way into being a band and recording this album, we sort of went on a bit of a weird folk pilgrimage. And we met up with lots of folk musicians that we respect and who we enjoy as musicians and as people. And we went to their houses or met them in cafes and restaurants and practice rooms, and just sort of tried to understand their perspective on making folk music. I think we just wanted to be better informed coming into the practice of finding and translating folk music. So yeah, we recorded all that, and we were thinking about sort of compiling it into some kind of documentary, but we kind of, that got put by the wayside as we got busier with music making. It was really interesting to speak to these people, and again that kind of informed the second album about finding individual stories rather than looking for a hooky chorus or looking for some words that sound particularly catchy, like looking for proper depthy stories. People like June Tabor and Frankie Armstrong were saying about that. So it was really valuable for us as a band, I think, especially in the early days.
One thing I'm massively getting here is how important research is to you guys, and how it's you obviously, it's not just about the music, it's about the context behind it and how you go about it. And you obviously do your research in very different ways. So the actual primary sources, going back to my school knowledge, and your secondary sources and all that sort of stuff, you guys must have been really good. I don't know if you went to uni, but you must have been very good researchers at uni.
Very diligent.
Yes.
Well, like Ben said, when we were starting off interviewing all these people that we admire, we thought that it would be a really exciting documentary. That was the intention, really. And as Ben said, to try and find out a bit more about the kind of process of gathering and making folk music contemporary, or not, or just, you know, retelling stories. And it just turned into this really exciting fact-finding mission, and this exciting like journey, really, of understanding how people approach songs and storytelling. And everybody approaches things in such different ways, and the things that draw people to songs or to pieces really vary. We spoke to June Tabor, and a lot of her kind of motivation for picking up a song and doing it is the melody. So she'd go, that's a really exciting melody, or that's a really devastating melody. That's something that I need to do. I can't not do it. Whereas Frankie Armstrong was very much about approaching something kind of from a lyrical perspective and finding words that spoke to her and picking up a song for that reason. So there's and everything in between, you know, the reasons why people kind of come to this music in the first place are so varied, and the types of people that are interested in folk music are so varied. I think it says, folk songs say different things to different people, and I think that's the kind of beauty of this genre, if you want to call it a genre. And it was just amazing traveling around the country, traveling around the UK and speaking to all these incredible people about their kind of own processes and their own journey into folk music. It was just amazing. It was so inspiring, really. And as Ben said, really kind of then fed into how we approached the second album.
I feel like that's how I feel with what I do. So getting to meet you guys and getting to meet loads of other musicians and bands, and it genuinely is, everyone is so different, and that's what I love about these interviews. So I learned so much, and it kind of helps shape me as well, because I feel like I understand other people's processes. I want to give that a go and then figure out how that works. And I hope that it's the same for the audience as well, that they are figuring out their style, if they're musicians or if not, based on other people's experiences. So brilliant. Now, before we hear your third song, I just want to talk about something that I'm very excited about, and that is your latest album, which comes out in February. Is that right? Yeah. So this is After the City. What is this album? Because it's something a bit unusual, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a concept album. So there's a book called After London or Wild England by Rich Jeffries, and it's a really early example of post-apocalyptic fiction, and this was written in like the late 1800s. I'm not great with dates, but it's basically when the book sort of starts, there's been some terrible catastrophe. Most of the population has been wiped out. People are living in little tribes around the country, and where London used to be has become a big black festering lake. So we kind of were reading this book and thought it was quite an interesting concept, and it was interesting these quite modern dystopian ideas actually date back that far back. We always think of them as very like modern contemporary concepts. So we took that, but because it doesn't tell you what happened and what the disaster was that led to the end of England, we found other songs from the Cotton Famine Ballad Archive and from the Bodleian Archive and various other sources, and we've constructed a backstory so you kind of, as the album goes on, you follow a hustling, bustling city as it slowly gets destroyed, and then we base the last 3 songs on Richard Jefferies' novel. So it's like nature reclaiming the earth, and so yeah, kind of the album tells the story from beginning to end. That's explained very badly, but
Amazing. That it's quite like, you think that the scenarios and stuff that you've got in there would be something you'd be like, that'll never happen, but it's actually really scary, I feel like, with the whole environmental stuff. It's not so unrealistic, guys. And I mean, I feel like you potentially predicted COVID with this whole, because you talk about like plague and stuff and famine and things. I think, thanks a lot, guys, but you predicted it.
It was just before it all kicked off, so we feel a little bit responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of were in 2 minds, weren't we, Ben? We came up with this idea that the summer before COVID, and then when COVID struck, we thought, is that a little bit on the nose to continue with the song about the apocalypse that features loads of an album about the apocalypse that features loads of songs about the plague. But we continued with it, and there was some kind of comfort to be drawn, I think, from hearing about previous experiences and coming through the other side, certainly in researching the kind of earlier half of the album.
yeah, I think we were all, like, everyone was so terrified and so confused when COVID obviously started, but it was something quite comforting of looking at other points in history when similar things had happened and thinking, actually, we've come through this, or humanity has overcome this before. So there's something sort of strangely reassuring about that in a way. It made it feel less alien, I suppose.
Yeah. If anything, I think that the pandemic will have helped you a little bit, because people now will relate to what you're talking about, and they're going to relate to people. Because if you've got any songs about like the Black Death or anything,
We've got some plague poetry in there to liven it up.
Really selling it.
Yeah.
suddenly we're going to be able to relate to the people who suffered all those hundreds of years ago, and we're going to be like, oh, me too, we're kin, that sort of thing. But did you, when you were writing it, did you ever have any sort of goal with it that you were trying to achieve by making people listen to it?
I think a lot of it was around like just trying to find good stories still, and illustrating the Richard Jefferies novel. But yeah, as we wrote it before COVID, and we were recording it on and off during COVID when we were allowed to be together. But it did become quite a hopeful thing for us, I suppose, not only with COVID, but with in terms of what's happening with nature and the crisis we're in. And it does feel quite hopeful. The album starts off very bleak and a lot of things are going wrong, but by the end of it, humanity and nature have sort of both come out of the other side stronger and better. So it was quite a hopeful, positive project to work on in such a negative time. So it definitely, I think as individuals, it definitely was a really good experience for us to be working on, and hopefully other people will find it a positive thing.
I'm sure we will. I mean, so that comes out in February. If someone wants to find it, where do they look? Where can they find the album?
So you can pre-order it on all the normal places. You can order it directly from Cargo Records. It will be on Spotify if you like to stream, and we'll be selling it at shows as well. Brilliant.
On our website homepage, which is birdinthebelly.com, there's a pre-order link, which is a really easy way of getting a copy as soon as it comes out. But yeah, you can stream it afterwards.
So everybody get on over there.
Yeah.
Get yourselves pre-ordering, because you don't want to miss the prediction of the pandemic. So anyway, let's have your third song, which is The Ships. Is that right? Yes. Can you explain this one before we hear it?
This is one of the songs in the latter half of the album. So as Ben was describing, things kind of take a slightly more hopeful turn after the end of the world, where the kind of cities start to rebuild themselves and nature starts to re-emerge. And the ships is the final song on the album, is it, Ben?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's the very most hopeful part. So if you think this one's depressing, then probably the rest of the album isn't for you. So this is about kind of a couple of people staring out over the sea and noticing kind of things starting to come back. So the ships are, you know, on course there on the sea, and there's kind of cities almost re-emerging from the water. So it's quite pastoral, and it kind of sounds quite pastoral, but there's it's something about the rebirthing of nature.
Beautiful sea she is today, clear enough to drink, abounds with fish of every kind, adorned with islands green. On a calm evening, sun goes down across the level water. The eye can see a low dark cloud rest the horizon's border. Sometimes she's blue, reflects the noon, others she's white from the clouds. Storms come quick and the ships follow the train, move round. Sudden storms and shifting winds, more dangerous than sea. Morning calm and evening still, between them dark and green. Concealed beneath the surface, ancient cities and lost towns, driven back year by year, then swept away and drowned. Sometimes she's blue, reflects the noon, others she's white from the clouds. Storms come quick and the ships follow the train, move round. The sea at last has found her bounds, last 100 years or more. Even in the wet season, no farther creeps ashore. Tonight we walk the empty beach, when rising grounds we'll gaze across the stretch of stormy sea, reward the working day. Sometimes she's blue, reflects the noon, others she's white from the clouds. Storms come quick and the ships follow the train, move round.
I thought that song was definitely hopeful. It gave me dreamy vibes. I was feeling very dreamy in it. And I thought that it was a bit like a love song to the sea at points. It just felt very yeah, it was nice. It was really nice. And just the descriptions of the sea, everything was just like when you have the sea on a calm day, and it's just like the most beautiful thing in the world. And obviously in Brighton, you've got endless miles of sea. So it's really beautiful. I'm very excited to hear the rest of the album, if that's one of the songs that are on it. Anyway, let's talk a bit more about another project that you've done. Now, you've previously mentioned in this interview, you've mentioned Frankie Armstrong quite a bit. And in case our audience don't know, we did do an event last year, I think on the 1st of July, with Frankie Armstrong, where we actually met Ben, and Ben made a little appearance in it. And as part of that, we discussed her album, The Cats of Coven Lawn. Now, you guys, you were on that, or you were part of the project, isn't that right? Could you explain like what your role was really in that?
It was recorded at the studio, and Ben arranged, I think you arranged Frankie to come to the studio, didn't you?
Yeah, so we'd been talking to Frankie on and off since we interviewed her for our project, and we kind of accidentally became friends, which was nice. And she was reluctant to do another album, but we were really hopeful that she would. And then she sort of agreed to do it if she'd come do it with Tom producing at Tom's studio. And it was a really lovely experience. We all of us and Frankie and a lot of Frankie's friends all got together for a few days down in Tom's studio and just sort of did a lot of live takes. And Tom's a very good producer, and he makes everyone feel very comfortable. Everyone kind of forgets that they're being recorded.
I have a cat which helps Frankie relax. He is obsessed.
Because she's like I don't know, for me growing up and learning all about folk, she was like a big role in that, and she was a legend. And like as I was growing up, maybe she still is a legend. So how did that feel, kind of being in the studio with someone who's so integral to folk, who's been with like all the folk greats, you know, like Peggy Seeger, Ewan McCall and all that? How did that feel for you guys?
It was amazing. She's incredible to know and to work with. She has this voice which has changed since she was younger, but is just as captivating as it ever was. And this way of performing which draws you in to whatever she's singing in a way that is really quite exceptional. So every time I hear her, I have that same kind of shock of awe, really, actually. I think the way that she conveys her songs is really second to none. So to work with her was amazing. And she's hilarious and playful and silly, and just like us, really, actually. So to get to know her and be with her in the studio was just such a privilege. And the album's great. And again, there's moments on it which are hilarious, and like the meowing in the middle of Cats of Coven Lawn, and you know, quite off the wall. But it really was a pleasure and a privilege to do that with her. She did this version of a song that Ben actually wrote for Frankie for that album called Marcy's Guest House. And the way that she sung it, it's kind of from the point of view of a ghost, looking through looking at an old guest house and remembering what went on there. And the way that she sung it just brought the story to life in such a way, and you could almost envision that she was the ghost. And she can do that right through to I don't know what else was on the album. I mean, right through to kind of purely a cappella, 3-part harmonies, really beautifully entwined voices in a kind of traditional a cappella style. She's just got such versatility and such a wide range of interests in terms of what she enjoys to take on and arrange and to sing, that it was just a great album to work on. It was really, a good time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. She's 100% a storyteller and an actor, isn't she? And she's just being in the studio with her is just, I think you summed it up really well, Laura, by saying she's just silly and funny and magical, and you can't not just love Frankie.
Yeah, And I'd say it's a really good album to listen to. So if our audience didn't listen to it after the thing back last July, listen to it now. It makes so much more sense as well. Now everyone's met everyone. So definitely have a look at that. Now something else that's really exciting, especially for me as an avid Desert Island Discs listener, you guys were featured on it, weren't you? You were someone's Desert Island disc. Can you like explain a bit who it was and what the song was that they chose?
I'll take this one on. So it was an illustrator called Chris Riddell, who does lots of illustrations in The Observer and like political illustrations for newspapers and stuff, and lots of kids' books. Really, really well-regarded illustrator. And he lives in Brighton, and there's a folk club, Brighton Toy Museum, which he goes to, and he draws the acts as they're performing live as part of the show, and it's really captivating. He's got this amazing style, and the drawings are projected behind the stage, so when you're playing, or when you're watching, you see the drawings come to life. And we performed at the Toy Museum, and Chris Riddell was there, and we got to know him and got to chat with him, and he's a really lovely guy. He became a fan of our music, and we became a fan of his drawings and stuff. And then he was asked to go on Desert Island Discs, and he really nicely chose one of our songs to go on there.
Oh my gosh, did you know it was going to happen? Did he pre-warn you, or was it after that you heard?
He did pre-warn us. So it was recorded, say, in the November, and then aired in March or something. It's something equivalent to that. So he warned us it was going to happen. Yeah.
The song that he chose was Horace in Brighton, which is a story of a Victorian guy from London who went down to Brighton for a weekend of like hedonism and drinking and hanging out with the women, and he quite liked, I think, the fact that it was about Brighton. So it was pretty archaic in its language, but actually I guess said something to him about what Brighton is like now, and obviously he lives in Brighton now, so I think that was part of why he chose that particular song. But it was amazing. We were absolutely thrilled to be part of his collection. He's a great guy, and yeah, we were really pleased to have been supported by him in that way, and that the song obviously touched him.
Yeah. Oh, I can't tell you, if ever I got there, I'd be like, I've made it. That's it. I can retire now because I've made it on Desert Island Discs. It's absolutely incredible. Now, sadly, we are running out of time, so I have one more thing I'd like to ask you before we hear our final song. And that is, obviously, we've heard about After the City, but what other things do you have lined up in the future?
So we're talking to a few people about different commissions at the moment. I don't know how many of them will definitely happen, so I won't go into too much detail, but we're talking to various different towns and cities about doing some sort of archive work, I suppose. So like looking at buildings and talking to people in the cities and trying to adapt their stories into songs. So that's some fun projects. And I guess we don't want to leave it too long till we're back in the studio doing another album, I don't think. I'm looking at everyone else in case they don't agree.
We'll crack on with album 4.
Yeah.
Tom, get the organ out. We've got a potential project coming up with Chris Riddell, actually. Again, not necessarily at liberty to go into loads of detail, but hopeful that will come off this year. And yeah, as Ben said, a couple of commissions across the country. Some live gigging obviously has been really restricted over the last year and a half, 2 years, where we haven't performed live very often at all, but we're picking that up again this year. We have a few festival bookings and some shows locally here in Brighton, but also up in the Midlands later on in February. So we have a few fingers in pies, but mainly looking forward to just getting back to performing live because we love it. Whether it's a folk club in a dusty old back room of a pub or an arts venue with lighting and sound system, we just love performing live. So to get back to that is really where we want to be, I think.
Will there be a tour for After the City?
mini one.
Okay, so people should just keep their eyes peeled. Will that information all be on the website?
It's all on our website now. Yeah. So it's under live dates, I think. Something similar to that. But yeah, we've got a few dates, in the Midlands, down in Brighton, up in London. And the album release show is at the Harrison in London, King's Cross, the day after the album's released. Can't remember the dates.
The album's out 25th of February. The launch gig at the Harrison is the 26th of February.
Excellent. You guys like to schedule things for significant birthdays in my life, because the 25th is my mum's, the 26th is my dad's, and then you've got that gig in Brighton on the 14th of April, mine. So you guys, we're just so in tune. Excellent. So we're going to have our final song now, but before we hear that, or before you tell us a bit about it, I just want to say a huge thank you for joining me today. So yeah, the last song is The Tragic Hearts of Town. I don't know who wants to take this one to explain it, but I'm just going to throw it to you guys, and one of you decide.
So this is from right at the start of the album. It's the first song on the new album, and this is when the city is hustling and bustling and things haven't gone wrong yet. It's based or adapted from a poem called Glasgow by Alexander Smith in 1850 something. But yeah, it just illustrates that hustling, bustling city, and the narrator, the only nature the narrator can see is the plant that's dying on his windowsill. So that kind of sets the scene for the album.
Thank you very much for watching. To find out more information about our future Tuesday Folk People sessions, please sign up to our mailing list or keep an eye on our social media and website. Our next session will be a week from today at 8 p.m. See you then.